Okay, what we're going to do next is kind of walk through the lab 0201. And so, over the course of the last, couple class sessions, I'd say about half a class session or so, Grant and I have been kind of working through this lab, and Grant has had a couple of questions along the way. I've been able to kind of get him unstuck. And so, my recommendation for any student who is going through this, try and answer these questions using your own troubleshooting, what you've learned so far, and the Mongo docs. And so there's been a lot of resources. If you watch the last lecture, all the different ways to query data. So make sure to watch that prior lecture, otherwise you're really going to be lost on how to do CRUD operations. Um, and so Grant answered all these, and then what I figured I would do is go ahead and run these queries, um, and then have Grant explain them. Again, I want you to try these on your own. Only use this video if you're stuck, and maybe help you get unstuck. Okay, so the objective is to try and do as many of these on your own. Use this video to get you unstuck if you're getting stuck on any particular one. So what I need to do is go ahead and connect into the Mflix database. And so if I log in here with my Mongo credentials, and you kind of have the organization, and then you've got the project. We spun up a cluster yesterday, and we uh, can connect to this cluster, and then connect through the shell. And we already added my path variable yesterday during the video, so that should allow me to just kind of come in here, go to a command prompt, paste in that command, and then it should prompt me for my credentials. All right, so let me open up my credentials. Ew. Doesn't really matter if you can see my credentials. Connecting to. Ah, I'm in a different location now. Problem, I need to open up some ports. Your current IP address is not added. Let's add an IP address, the current IP address. Give it a minute to make those changes. Pending. Wait for that to say active. All right, let's try again. There we go. You're not gonna be able to get in anyways if you're not on my IP address, even if you got my username and password. Okay. Grant, you with me?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. And so first query, list all the movies in the database. I have your answers on my computer, and hopefully the copy paste operation is working. Um, why is this not working? Well, I need to use my database. So let's show DBS. And these are the sample databases. So let's use sample underscore mflix. Clear the screen. Now that I'm showing we're in the right database, now let's hit that. And we get a bunch of results. And then it says type IT for more, IT for more. You get the idea. So we are showing all the databases, DB movies, fine, anything. So I was gonna have Grant kind of explain what he learned along the way, but Grant, what do you think of that query?
Yeah, this one was, I mean, pretty similar to, I think, the first thing that we went over in the lecture yesterday. You're just pathing down from DB and then you're in the movies collection and then using find with open and close parentheses. This one was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's kind of a select star, right? So
Yeah,
so in SQL you could just say select star and find everything. So number two, basically the same thing. DB, you're just more or less hitting a different collection, right?
yeah.
So we're listing all the theaters. Number three says list all the documentaries in the database.
So this one was the first time that we had to include an object inside of find, so using the curlies. I think I ran into a little bit of an issue with this one where I didn't have something case sensitive, if I remember correctly. So that was something that where I wasn't getting results for a while, even though I had the right syntax in there. So that was something that I had to be more careful of as I went forward. But you're using inside the object, you're using whatever you're searching for, like genres or countries or year or awards or something, and then you are in quotes listing whatever specific uh, genre you're looking for.
So you can see here genres. Um, is an array. So DB movies find genres, documentary. Let's hit that. And there you go, documentary, so on and so forth. Very good. Okay, number four, list all the movies with a rating of 7 and 1,000 votes.
So this is definitely the first one that really stumped me. Um, and you're once again using uh, find under db.movies and .find with parens. Um, and then it gets a little bit trickier because you're having to use the greater than, is that it? Operator?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was really just the location of the amount of curlies with these operators and where each of them are going that kind of stumped me for a while. So you're using, if you can see, imdb.rating and then a colon and then the greater than or equal to 7. Then you're doing the same thing with votes greater than or equal to 1,000. One thing that I ran into was that I didn't have imdb.rating or imdb.votes in quotes for a while, and that was causing me to get an error. Um, and once I figured that out, I mean, it's just all of that within the object. Then you have the smaller objects for the greater than operators.
Yeah, so if we just look at the data, the way that we're able to say, okay, this is a property, but it actually has an object underneath it. So the way that we're able to access that is the property dot is the dot notation, right? So you say, okay, this is the IMDb property, and then we're looking at the dot rating, right? So that's definitely something as far as how to access sub documents, right? So that's definitely important because um, this, yeah, just this dot notation and having sub documents inside of this Mongo collections are pretty common. So that's what I would add here is that this is an important thing to understand, kind of moving forward in how to access sub documents. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's your rating, and then there's IMDb.votes. and hit that query, and that's the data you get back. Now, if we just go ahead and see IMDb rating is greater than 7 and votes is greater than 1,000. So the data is coming back what you would want. Next one. List all the movies available in France. Copy this in. Anything unique on this one?
No, it's pretty similar to the third one with the genres, documentaries, except that you're changing to countries. Um, and there is a countries. Yeah.
There you go. Yep. And so even though that your countries are in an array, it's able to parse through the array and find the ones that label France. Cool. Number 6, list all the movies released in 2010. Anything unique here?
Um, Pretty much the same as the last one, except that in the data sets, the year is not in quotes, the 2010. So
Good find.
that shouldn't be included in uh, your query.
Number 7 is a fun one. 7 was definitely one that stumps a lot of students, and it is one that if you get it on your own, you probably spent some time to get it because it's not the um, it's a more advanced query. So let me kind of maybe there.
So yeah, this one stumped me for a long time, and I think I still needed some help getting the final result. But I spent a lot of time looking at the documentation on MongoDB's website, and that's where the $ near and $geometry come straight from that, and the type point. So that's all I think just standard from their website. The location.geo was once again something that wasn't in quotes when I was working on it for a while. And then it's getting the coordinates. And to do that, I went to Google Maps and punched in Rankin's campus. Um, and then I found the coordinates from actually the address bar at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so, and as it's noted in the instructions, it's swapped. So you put the second number in the address bar in that first spot in the array, and then a comma, and then the first coordinate in the address bar. And then the max distance after that type object is it said, what was it, 100 miles. So the Mongo does things in meters, so I went and did a meters to miles conversion, and that's the number that I got.
Bingo. And so I skipped over. It says list all the theaters within 100 miles of Rankin St. Louis campus. And so that's where you're talking about going to the Google Maps and getting the latitude and longitude coordinates, plugging that in. The rest of that was basically research you found on the Mongo docs, and then the max distance was a little calculation to get that 16, which kind of makes sense because I remember, in high school, the mile was to run the mile was called a 1600. So you multiply, 1600 by 100, and you get some number like that, 160K kind of thing. And then location.geo, um, the location, and then you got the .geo as a sub object. So again, this is um, um, yeah, there it goes. This curly, there it is. That curly closes that curly. Right, so location.geo is how you get to the actual x and y coordinates. Definitely a harder one, but worked our way through. Number 8 says list the 10 most recent comments for a single movie. So let's put in that. What do you remember about this one?
So another tough one for me. It starts with getting the movie ID, and I just picked that at pretty much random.
Yeah, I don't
And
think we had selected. Um, so here's your movie ID equal to an object ID. I will say this is something you do quite a bit in the future. Is when you're like selecting a thing, is you're selecting it by its object ID, and so it's just not the number one here. It's EQ and then object ID, which is a method, and then you got to pass in that GUID or whatever that string of unique characters. So that you mentioned that being a challenging thing, and there's a good reason why. Is because we hadn't done that before.
so yeah, so that selected just one movie, and then it was sorting by um, the date, and that's under the comments collection. They all have a date uh, in there, and the negative one sorts them in uh, reverse chronological order, right?
Right.
And then the dot limits that to just the first 10 comments after that sort has gone through.
Now, finding a movie with 10 um, comments on it, like this particular movie looks like it has one comment on it. Let me check that against another. Um, this is number what? 8? I'm gonna check that against another movie. So I'm gonna copy in a different object ID and paste. Basically the same thing, just a different. Yeah, so just finding a movie with a bunch of comments, it was the challenge here. But that's the query is correct. It's just finding the data that matches what we're asking for. Um, so that was number 8. Number 9 was another challenging one.
Yeah, this one was probably the hardest of the bunch, and it required going through quite a few steps. Um, the first one, it's all using this aggregate uh, function, and the first was getting this group by emails, and that yeah, that pulls up every email, and the count essentially is counting the number of comments that each of those emails have attributed to them, and we even we changed that from email to name and got the same list just with a different ID attached to them, like that. And that was just something that even through looking through the aggregate documentation that I was really kind of struggling to get onto the command line. So that required a lot of help for me. And then after that, there's the comma with sorting it, and it's using the $ sort, and that is going to sort by the number of comments. And then finally the $limit 10, like the last problem, is just including the first 10 on the list. It's just a little bit different because you're using it inside objects. So you're using the curly brackets and the $ limit instead of like dot limit, like on question 8. So that was something that I really didn't pick up on for a while.
Right, so to do this limit function inside of this aggregate, it's a different syntax. And to do a sort, it's kind of a different syntax. So, this aggregate function is used when you want to perform one step at a time. So it groups everything together. That's your first step inside of the order of operations. So it's the first step is kind of a grouping. The next step, if it's a conveyor belt, is kind of how I understand this aggregate function. Is the first it's assembly of this function. The first work that happens is a grouping, and then it goes down to the next. What happens next? To this data is that the data is sorted, and then what happens next is that the data is cut off to be a limit of 10. And so, for more advanced queries, um, this aggregate function can be used to um, return data that there might not be a built-in function for, but by chaining these things together one at a time, you can kind of get the data back. And so these are the users that have um, a lot of comments, and you can see they're sorted by their email address and in descending order, and there's only 10 of them. And so these are the top 10 comments. And that was number 9. List the 10 users who have made the most comments. And number 10 is list the 10 movies with the highest Rotten Tomato ratings. And so,
Yeah, and this one I just realized I think I meant to keep working on it, because that is not correct,
aha.
and I've got to figure that out.
Um, well, let's walk through. Let's walk through this query. We kind of do a find star sort, and so you're sorting by two things: by the rating, descending order, and then by title, and then limit 10. Um, and so list the 10 movies with the highest Rotten Tomatoes rating. And so, the rating in descending order, and you're limiting 10. And so basically, if you kind of look at these, the viewer rating is 5. Kind of go up here, viewer rating is 5. And so you're basically sorting by the rating and then limiting 10. And to dig down into that is tomatoes.viewer.rating, right? So there's tomatoes, there's viewer.rating in quotes. You had it very close. You were just missing a set of curlies.
A set of curlies and it's not in quotes,
And
and I
it's not
didn't
in
go down.
quotes and a negative one instead of a positive one.
Yeah, and I didn't go down to viewer. I just had tomatoes dot rating, but that wouldn't have gotten to that object.
Yep. Yep. So you were rather close. Exercise 2. So we are going to be doing more than just reading data, right? So exercise 1 was just reading, but we're doing CRUD operations as always. So add yourself as a new user. Let's look at that query. Whoops. you go. Anything on that one?
No, it's a pretty simple insert one. And I just searched up the other users to see what uh, data was entered for them already, and it was name and email and password.
Yep.
And then it generated the object ID once I did that.
Correct. All right. Um, Number 2, add a new movie to the database.
This one pretty similar to adding the user, except it's in the movies collection. And just some more data to put in. I was just looking to make sure what was in an array, what was not, what was as a string, and like the year is just the number. And that's pretty much it for this one.
I think it might have already been in there,
Yeah,
but nonetheless, it worked.
that looks like mine up at the top.
A lot of movies in this database.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Add a new theater. So again, insert one theater ID. You want to walk through that one? Why do you have a theater ID of 9999?
That was something separate from the object ID and the other theaters. So I just picked that number
Right.
in there. And then I just entered everything except for the geo location I realized, but I was also making up a theater. Um, but that would just be another object after the address object and still within the location.
Looks good. And number 4, add a new comment to the database. Anything unique on this one?
So there's the new date for date, which I found from their documentation on Mongo's website.
Yep.
Other than that, it's pretty much the same type of entry that we were doing before.
Talk about that movie ID property. What's that?
So that was basically assigning this comment to a specific movie. So I took that from just a random movie that I found in the database and copied that over to make sure that this comment was assigned to that movie.
Yep. Great. And it has a new object ID. And number 5, update the IMDb and Rotten Tomato ratings, including votes for a movie in the database. Hint, use the set operator. Let me get this copied.
So for this one, I found just a movie object ID and put that in. That's the first part of this with the curly braces underscore ID and then the dollar sign equals. And then so finding a specific movie. And then I looked at the ratings for that movie and I then did the set,
Mm-hmm.
the dollar sign set later and changed that. Added some rating votes to both IMDb.rating and the tomatoes, which is pretty similar to these. It's like still having it in the quotes within the curly braces, like some of the stuff in exercise 1. And then I was able to, once I had data for all those, I just enter that, and the stuff that I had changed was changed. And then I think there's a third piece of data in each of those viewer um, objects, and those were unchanged.
Okay, so let's run that. That looks good. And we get a modified count of 1. So if I do dbmovies.find and pass in this object ID, see, I get my curly braces messed up too. There we go. So I'm looking at your IMDb rating needs to be 7.5. IMDb rating 7.5. Votes 954. And viewer rating, Tomatoes viewer rating is 4.5. Tomatoes viewer rating is 4.5. So just verifying all the data is in fact updated. Number 6. Make a movie available in a new country.
So for this, you once again have to, the first object is selecting whatever movie you want to update, and I'm using the object ID once again. And then after that, first two sets of curly braces, there's the comma, and then it's actually the changing the existing data, which is in this case using push to add an additional country on the end.
Very
And then
nice.
it's just countries and France in quotes.
Yep.
I think this movie, the only thing in there was the US originally, and then it added France onto that, so it had both countries listed.
There it is. All right, number 7. Add a movie to a new genre. Anything stand out on this one?
So yeah, this one I had a little bit of a question with, and we used the what was it? We looked up the existing genres that were already listed, and then came up with a new one, which ended up being children, and that just needed to be in its own object after the push. Um, Similar, I guess the end result is pretty similar to adding the countries, but there were just a couple steps in place beforehand to make sure that we were adding actually a new genre, and that was at distinct.
Yeah, so that was a query that kind of helped you find what genres are out there.
Right, and children was not in that list before we executed that
Right.
push.
Right. Very nice. All right. Add a list of actors to a movie.
So this one I kind of just I looked up on this with this object ID. It's a Charlie Chaplin movie that was just at the bottom of the list that I was looking at, and I just ended up, because it's using the set, I just ended up replacing the list that was already in there. Um, and it put the actors in alphabetical order. Um, and that was just using a set operator, and then within that there's cast, and then the all the actors are within an array.
Yep, that's exactly what I had. And number 9, delete a theater.
This one was pretty simple, using the delete one and just simply using the object ID like we were using to look up the other theaters
Yep.
and movies.
And to delete a user.
And this one was pretty similar. I just entered the information that I used to enter myself in the first place.
There you go. All right. So this lab is a large part of getting you ready for your next hands-on test. You will have a hands-on test where you're hitting a database with a bunch of CRUD operations, selecting data out in various ways, manipulating data, deleting data, inserting data. You did all those operations here. And there's one more lab. There's a lab 0202, and we'll get started on that next week. And then we will um, have our next hands-on test once we finish up that lab. Thank you, Grant.
Thank you.